The land of Israel trembled under the shadow of idolatry. King Ahab and Queen Jezebel had led the people away from the one true God, turning hearts to Baal, a god of fire, storms, and hollow promises. Temples burned, altars groaned, and prophets of Baal shouted into the void, yet no fire answered. A nation that once walked in covenantal light now wandered in darkness, fear gripping their hearts. Families whispered of famine and divine wrath, and the earth itself seemed to mourn as drought strangled rivers and scorched fields. Amid this chaos arose Elijah, a prophet unlike any Israel had seen. Clad not in armor but in unwavering faith, he moved like a shadow through the desert, speaking words that pierced the soul. As the Lord, the God of Israel, lives whom I serve, there shall be neither dew nor rain these years, except by my word. His voice was a blade, slicing through lies, daring kings, priests, and citizens alike to witness the undeniable power of Yahweh. Yet danger lurked everywhere. Jezebel's fury burned hotter than the drought itself, and whispers of death followed Elijah like vultures over a battlefield. Elijah's mission was clear: to confront not just a people, but the very spirit of rebellion itself. The stage was set for a confrontation that would shake mountains, silence false gods, and ignite fire from heaven. The tension in Israel's air was palpable, a storm gathering before the divine clash that would decide the fate of a nation. This was not a mere spectacle. It was a battle between heaven and human defiance, and Elijah stood as God's chosen warrior in this epic confrontation. Elijah strode onto Mount Carmel, the wind carrying the scent of parched earth and anticipation. The prophets of Baal had gathered, their chants and cries attempting to summon flames from their god. Stamping feet, leaping and slashing themselves in desperate ecstasy. Hours passed. No fire came. Sweat streaked their faces. Panic whispered in their ears. Every scream into the empty sky was met with silence. Then Elijah, his voice calm yet commanding, addressed the people of Israel. How long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him, but if Baal, then follow him. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. He called for a contest, a test that would expose truth and power, declaring, "Let the God who answers by fire be recognized as the true God." There was a tension so thick that hearts raced. Eyes darted between Elijah and the trembling prophets of Baal, and the very earth seemed poised for the clash of the divine. The challenge was brutal in its simplicity. 2 altars, 2 offerings, 2 gods, and 1 fire to prove the truth. The stakes were life and death, faith and despair. The crowd's murmurs became a roar, anticipation tightening its grip. This was more than a contest. It was a battlefield where heaven's power would descend, where the impossible would become reality, and where Elijah would demonstrate that faith in God is not a whisper, but a storm. The prophets of Baal leapt upon their altar, screaming to their silent god. They danced frantically, their knives cutting into flesh, drawing blood in the hopes of provoking a spark. "Baal, hear us! Answer us!" They cried until voices cracked and the sun hung high in the sky, merciless and unyielding. Yet the altar remained cold, untouched by flame. Their desperation grew with each passing hour. Fear replaced hope as the crowd's murmurs turned to anxious glances, whispers of doom filling the air. Elijah watched silently, unwavering, his presence a stark contrast to the chaos around him. He had no sword, no shield, only faith and a vision burned into his soul. To show Israel that the Lord does not share his glory with false gods. The tension was electric. Sweat dripped, hearts pounded, and the moment of truth hovered like a predator above its prey. The prophets' frenzy became a terrifying dance of futility, their energy spent on hollow ritual while the God of Israel waited, unseen yet palpably near. Finally, as the sun reached its zenith, Elijah stood alone on his altar, his eyes fixed on heaven, his lips whispering words that carried the weight of eternity. This was not a plea, but a declaration. Lord God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God in Israel. Every eye turned, every breath caught, and the battlefield of faith fell silent in awe of the impending miracle. Elijah's voice thundered into the heavens, not with fear, but with authority. As he prayed, a hush fell over Mount Carmel, the kind that precedes divine eruption. The people could feel it, a tremor, a shift in the air, a heat that had nothing to do with the sun. And then, like a spear of pure light, fire fell from heaven, consuming not just the wood but the stones, the water, and even the sacrifice itself. Smoke spiraled into the sky, and the roar of God's power shook the mountain, echoing across valleys and plains. The crowd fell to their knees, awe and terror intertwined. The prophets of Baal lay scattered, powerless, their cries drowned by the undeniable proof of heaven's supremacy. The battle had been fought, and victory belonged to the one true God. Elijah, standing in the midst of the altar, now ablaze with divine fire, was the visible embodiment of God's authority, a lone warrior whose faith had summoned heaven's fury to demonstrate that rebellion against God is futile. This was not just fire, it was a declaration. Every spark, every flame, every roaring pillar of heat testified that God alone holds power over life, death, and destiny. Israel had witnessed a supernatural battle where faith triumphed over deception, where courage confronted fear, and where the hand of God struck with unstoppable force. The fire left a scorched testament, a visible reminder of divine authority. The people fell prostrate, trembling, hearts pierced with the reality of God's power. Elijah turned his gaze toward the crowd, his voice cutting through the smoke. "Seize the prophets of Baal, let not one escape." Justice was swift. Idolatry had no place on Mount Carmel, and the nation witnessed firsthand that the God who commands fire is the same God who demands obedience. Rain, long withheld during the drought, began to whisper in the distance, a promise that God's mercy follows judgment. Elijah's heart, though burdened with the weight of a rebellious nation, burned with resolve and purpose. He knew this victory was not merely spectacle but a turning point. Faith had been tested, fear confronted, and the invisible hand of God displayed in a display that would echo through history. Mount Carmel became more than a battlefield. It became a testimony. It was a declaration that courage, prayer, and obedience are the weapons of the righteous. The people saw what faith backed by God's power can accomplish, and Israel, though scarred by idolatry, glimpsed a God who moves mightily to protect his covenant. Elijah's confrontation with the prophets of Baal is a blueprint for spiritual warfare. Faith is not passive, it is aggressive, bold, and unwavering, even when the odds seem insurmountable. Courage does not always roar. It sometimes stands alone, silent yet unyielding, knowing that the power of God will not fail. The prophet's life reminds believers that true victory belongs not to numbers, weapons, or rituals, but to those who walk in obedience to God, trusting Him above all else. This story is also a call to spiritual vigilance. Idolatry, distraction, and fear are ever-present enemies, yet the same God who called down fire on Mount Carmel is present today, ready to intervene in battles that seem impossible. Prayer, courage, and unwavering trust remain the weapons of those who face spiritual opposition. Elijah's legacy challenges believers to stand firm, confront darkness, and call upon heaven with authority, knowing that God's power is limitless and ever-present. The flames of Mount Carmel are more than history. They are a warning and an invitation. God's power has not diminished. His Spirit has not departed, and his call to stand against deception remains as urgent as ever. Every believer faces a modern Mount Carmel, battles where fear, doubt, and falsehood threaten to overwhelm. The example of Elijah teaches that with faith, prayer, and courage, fire from heaven can still descend. Miracles can still occur, and the impossible can be made possible. Stand boldly, pray fervently, trust relentlessly. Let the story of Elijah calling down fire from heaven ignite your own faith, reminding you that no darkness is too deep, no enemy too powerful, and no obstacle too great when God fights on your side. The battle belongs to the Lord, and the victory is certain for those who believe.